The elite shooters club in Boston was a temple of precision, where wealth, power, and skill converged in a symphony of polished firearms and designer shooting gear. The sharp crack of a perfect shot echoed through the air, followed by thunderous applause from patrons whose tailored vests and custom ear protection cost more than most people's monthly rent. Blake Radcliffe lowered his custom Remington 700, its sleek barrel glinting under the range's pristine lighting. A smirk spread across his tanned face as the digital target display confirmed another bullseye. At 42, Blake was the undisputed king of this world, a 5-time national champion, Olympic gold medalist, and the face of Remington's premium line. His family's oil fortune had given him access to the best coaches since childhood, and his natural talent had done the rest. This was his domain, an impenetrable fortress of privilege, until Emma Miller walked through the door. Emma, 35, stood near the entrance, clutching a worn leather purse that seemed out of place among the club's opulence. Her blue cardigan and department store jeans marked her as an outsider, a dandelion in a rose garden. Her sensible shoes and simple ponytail did little to draw attention, and the receptionist, a young woman with immaculate blonde hair and a practiced smile, barely glanced up. "Membership cards only," she said, her tone dismissive, as if Emma were a minor inconvenience. Emma took a deep breath, pulling a crinkled envelope from her purse. "I have a day pass," she said softly. "It was a gift." The receptionist's eyes flicked from Emma's shoes to her face, lingering just long enough to convey skepticism before examining the pass. "Fine," she said, waving her toward the range. "Basic range is down the hall." Across the room, Blake noticed the newcomer, his sharp blue eyes narrowing. At 6 feet 2 inches, with a physique honed by years of disciplined training and a wardrobe curated to project success, he was used to commanding attention. "Well, well," he drawled, loud enough for his entourage of fellow shooters to hear. "Looks like someone took a wrong turn on the way to Walmart." Laughter rippled through his group, drawing curious glances from other members. Emma kept her eyes on the floor, navigating the polished hallway to the basic range. Rebecca Johnson, the club's manager and a former competitive shooter, frowned at Blake's comment. Her short-cropped hair and no-nonsense demeanor set her apart from the club's flashier patrons, but she held her tongue. The elite shooters club catered to the powerful, and Blake Radcliffe was its golden son. Emma found a spot at the far end of the basic range, where the lanes were less crowded and the equipment less ostentatious. She set her purse on the small shelf, carefully unwrapping a cloth bundle to reveal a standard Glock 19, reliable, unremarkable, and a stark contrast to the custom rifles and engraved handguns favored by the club's elite. Blake and his friends drifted closer, their interest piqued by the prospect of amusement. $10 says she can't hit the target," one of them muttered, adjusting his monogrammed shooting glasses. Blake scoffed, his voice carrying. "Make it 10 grand. I bet she's never held a gun in her life." He sauntered over, his polished boots clicking on the floor. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his tone laced with false politeness. "This isn't a knitting circle. Sure you're in the right place?" Emma looked up, her hazel eyes meeting his with a steadiness that momentarily unsettled him. "I'm just here to practice," she said, her voice quiet but firm. Blake recovered quickly, his smirk returning. "Practice, honey? This is a place for serious shooters. $10,000 says you can't hit the bullseye from 50 yards. Emma's expression remained neutral. "I don't have that kind of money." Blake's smile widened, sensing an easy win. "Then let's make it interesting. If you make the shot, I pay. If you miss, you leave and never come back. Deal?" Rebecca approached, her professional mask firmly in place. "Mr. Radcliffe, perhaps we should let our guest practice in peace." Blake waved her off without breaking eye contact with Emma. "Stay out of this, Rebecca. We're just having a friendly wager." Emma's fingers brushed the simple gold band on her left hand, twisting it once. A gesture so subtle, only the most observant would notice. "All right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Blake's eyebrows shot up, surprised by her acceptance. "Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a show." No one noticed the shift in Emma's posture, her spine straightening, shoulders relaxing, feet settling into a balanced stance. No one recognized the expert grip as she lifted the Glock, or the controlled breathing pattern she adopted. And no one knew that the ring she wore had once belonged to Master Chief Nathan Miller, one of the most legendary snipers in SEAL Team 6 history. 3 years earlier, Emma had stood under a gray April sky at Arlington National Cemetery, the crisp snap of the Honor Guard's rifles cutting through the silence. The folded American flag pressed against her chest felt impossibly heavy as she watched her husband's casket being lowered into the ground. Nathan Miller, known as the Ghost among his peers for his uncanny precision, had served 15 years in the Navy SEALs. The official report cited a helicopter crash during a classified mission, but Emma knew there were truths buried in redacted files she'd never see. They'd met in Burlington, Vermont, where Nathan was visiting a recovering teammate. Emma, then an accountant with a predictable life, bumped into him at a coffee shop, their collision sparking hours of conversation. 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony attended by a handful of friends and Nathan's fellow operators. Life as a SEAL's wife meant long absences, unspoken fears, and moments of connection that carried them through. "You're the reason I fight to come home," Nathan would say, tracing her cheek with a calloused thumb. During one extended stateside period, after a mission left him with a torn ligament, Nathan took Emma to a shooting range. "If I'm gone so much, I want to know you can protect yourself," he explained, adjusting her stance with gentle hands. What began as a practical lesson became a shared passion. Emma proved a natural, her steady hands and calm focus surprising even Nathan. "You've got the 3 things that make a great shooter," he'd said after her first bullseye. "Steady hands, perfect vision, and the ability to stay calm under pressure." Over 3 years, whenever Nathan was home, they practiced together. He taught her proper stance, breathing control, sight alignment, and trigger discipline. "Shooting isn't about aggression," he'd say. "It's about absolute control, over your body, your breath, your fear." Emma absorbed every lesson, finding peace in the ritual. His teammate, Michael Reeves, once confided, "Boss says you're a better natural shot than half his recruits." The last time they shot together, 2 days before Nathan's final mission, he'd been unusually quiet. "Promise me you'll keep practicing," he said, his voice rough. Emma nodded, not understanding the weight of his request. After his death, Emma locked Nathan's guns in a safe and moved to Boston for a fresh start, taking a job at a corporate accounting firm. She hadn't touched a range until a package arrived from Michael Reeves, a day pass to the Elite Shooters Club and a note. "Nathan would want you to keep your promise. 3 years is long enough to grieve alone." Now, standing in the Elite Shooters Club with Blake's challenge hanging in the air, Emma felt a spark ignite, the woman she'd been before grief hollowed her out. She lifted the Glock, muscle memory taking over. The world narrowed to 3 points: herself, the gun, and the target. She took a deep breath, exhaled halfway, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, crisp and clean. The mechanical whir of the target retrieval system filled the hushed range, and when the paper arrived, a perfect hole marked the bullseye's center. Silence enveloped the room. Blake's smirk faltered as he noted Emma's textbook stance. He snatched the target, examining it closely. "Beginner's luck," he declared, his voice sharp. "Anyone can get lucky once." Rebecca stepped forward, her professional mask slipping to reveal admiration. "That was an exceptional shot, Miss Miller." "Emma Miller," Emma supplied quietly. Rebecca nodded, offering a small smile. "Miss Miller, perhaps you'd like to try our advanced range?" Before Emma could respond, Blake cut in. "One lucky shot doesn't make her a pro. Let's see her do it again. 3 bullseyes at 75 yards, $50,000. If you miss even one, you admit you cheated and leave." An uncomfortable murmur ran through the growing crowd. Senator Williams, a club regular, placed a hand on Blake's shoulder. "Perhaps this isn't the time, Blake." Blake shrugged him off. "What's the matter? Afraid your trick won't hold?" Emma considered walking away. She'd come to practice, not to perform. But Blake's arrogance stirred something deeper, a sense of injustice for everyone underestimated. "I'll take your challenge," she said softly. "On one condition: if I win, the $50,000 goes to the Veterans Support Foundation. Blake hesitated briefly before nodding. Fine. You won't win. Rebecca warned Emma quietly. Blake holds the club record at this distance. No one's beaten him in 5 years. Emma nodded. Thank you, but I'll be fine. As she moved to the 75-yard mark, Blake announced to the crowd, 3 bullseyes at 75 yards with a standard handgun, impossible for an amateur. Emma loaded fresh magazines, Nathan's lessons echoing, fall back on your training. Let your body remember what your mind might forget. She took her stance, the world fading to a pinpoint. The first shot cracked, hitting dead center. Blake's jaw tightened. The second followed, another bullseye. For the third, Emma twisted her wedding ring, feeling Nathan's presence. The final shot split the air, another perfect hit. The crowd erupted. Rebecca displayed the targets, confirming 3 bullseyes. Blake's face drained of color. Impossible, he hissed. She must have rigged something. Emma remained calm. I believe we had an agreement, Mr. Radcliffe. Agreement with a cheater? Blake snapped. No. We settle this properly. 1 week from today, a formal competition. 10 stations, varying distances, club-provided equipment. No tricks. Emma met his gaze. Same terms, $50,000 to the Veterans Support Foundation. Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. Deal. And when I win, you explain your trick. As the crowd dispersed, Rebecca approached Emma. That was brave, or foolish. Blake doesn't lose gracefully, and his family owns half of Boston. I didn't come for trouble, Emma said, gathering her things. Just to practice. Then who are you, Emma Miller? Rebecca asked, studying her. Just someone keeping a promise, Emma replied, her voice barely audible. That evening, Blake sat in his penthouse overlooking the Charles River, swirling aged scotch in a crystal tumbler. News of the confrontation had spread, with social media dubbing Emma the unknown marksman. His girlfriend, Jessica Thompson, scrolled her phone, her expression tense. They're calling her a phenomenon, Blake. A blurry video of her last shots got thousands of views. She's a fraud, Blake insisted. No one walks in off the street and shoots like that. He dialed his investigator. Find everything on Emma Miller. Dig deep, her husband, her past, everything. Across town, Emma sat at her kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling beside her. Michael Reeves had called twice, but she hadn't answered. The day's events replayed in her mind. She hadn't planned to make a scene, but Blake's challenge had awakened something, a fire she thought grief had extinguished. Her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Miss Miller, this is Rebecca Johnson from the club, the voice said. Blake's investigating you. He's convinced you cheated. Emma closed her eyes, unsurprised. Thank you, but I have nothing to hide. Be careful, Rebecca warned. Blake's family has influence. If he feels threatened, he can make life difficult. I'll be careful, Emma promised. After the call, she opened a wooden box containing Nathan's medals, letters, and their wedding photo. Beneath the folded flag from his funeral was his logbook, detailing their practice sessions. His precise handwriting noted, Emma, 50 yards, 9/10 bullseyes. Natural talent. Better than most recruits. The next morning, Emma called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. She drove to a public range outside Boston, far from the club's exclusivity. For 8 hours, she practiced methodically, each shot a conversation with Nathan's memory. That evening, Rebecca texted, Blake's changing rules, 10 firearms, varying distances. Board approved. Emma replied, no changes needed. Blake, meanwhile, grew obsessed. His investigator's initial report was frustratingly sparse. Emma Miller, 35, senior accountant at Meridian Financial. Moved from Virginia Beach 3 years ago. Clean record, no social media, no shooting history. Blake demanded more, focusing on Virginia Beach and her husband's identity. On Thursday, the investigator called back. Emma's the widow of Master Chief Nathan Miller, SEAL sniper, killed 3 years ago. Nicknamed the Ghost, he trained her extensively. One contact said he called her a natural with exceptional potential. Blake felt a chill. Emma wasn't a lucky amateur, she was the protégé of a legend. His narrative of exposing a fraud collapsed, replaced by a more compelling story, a widow honoring her husband against a privileged champion. He poured another drink, dismissing Jessica's concern. Experience wins over sentiment, he said. Tomorrow happens as planned. The day before the competition, Michael Reeves appeared at Emma's door. You couldn't return a call, he asked, his gruff tone softened by concern. I've been busy, Emma said, letting him in. Shooting manuals were spread across her table. Nathan would be proud, Michael said. Not just of the shooting, of you stepping back into the world. Emma's eyes burned with tears. This wasn't planned, Michael. The best battles rarely are, he replied. But be careful. Radcliffe's not used to losing. He handed her a list of the competition's firearms. Friends will be in the audience tomorrow. You're not alone. That evening, Rebecca called with another update. The final station's a Macmillan TAC, 338, Blake's specialty. The board weighted it for 30% of the score. Emma calculated the implications. Nathan had trained her on handguns, but her experience with long-range rifles was limited. She thanked Rebecca and spent the night studying Nathan's logbook, memorizing his formulas for wind and distance adjustments. On Friday, Emma drove to a specialized range where a man with military bearing waited by a black SUV with government plates. Mrs. Miller, I'm Commander Wilson, former Team 3. I served with Nathan in Baghdad. Heard you might need pointers on the Macmillan TAC, 338. For 4 hours, Wilson guided her through the rifle's intricacies. Nathan taught you well on handguns, he said, watching her hit increasingly accurate shots. You've got his patience. Trust what you know. He handed her a notebook with Nathan's distance calculations. These might help tomorrow. Why are you helping me? Emma asked. When you lose a brother, you look after what mattered to him, Wilson said. Nathan was proud of you. Said you had the calmest hands he'd ever seen. Competition day transformed the elite shooters club into a spectacle, with the board opening the event to the public. Rebecca met Emma privately, whispering, the equipment's been tampered with, subtle adjustments to favor Blake. Emma nodded, clutching Nathan's notebook. Blake approached, his logo-emblazoned gear gleaming. Slept well, Mrs. Miller? The spotlight can be overwhelming for amateurs. My husband taught me about pressure, Emma replied evenly. The competition unfolded across 10 stations, each with a different firearm and distance. Blake's technique was flawless, honed by years of competition. Emma's was quieter, more economical, reflecting military training. By the 5th station, she noticed a heavier trigger pull on the Sig Sauer. Recalling Nathan's words, equipment fails. Adapt and overcome, she adjusted her stance and matched Blake's score. By the 8th station, Blake's lead had narrowed to a statistical tie. The crowd, initially drawn by Blake's reputation, grew vocal in support of Emma's quiet competence. At the 9th station, their scores were dead even. The final station, the Macmillan TAC, 338, would decide the outcome. Blake shot first, hitting 9 of 10 shots in the innermost rings. Not everyone's built for this pressure, he said loudly, eyeing Emma. She noticed subtle scope and stock adjustments, deliberate sabotage. Consulting Nathan's notebook, she applied his formulas. A flash of light from Blake's entourage disrupted her sightline, but she paused, refocused, and fired 10 consecutive bullseyes, surpassing Blake's score. The crowd erupted in a standing ovation. Rebecca announced, Emma Miller, first place. Blake Radcliffe, second. Blake's facade shattered. This was a stunt. The equipment was rigged. Rebecca held up security footage showing Blake's team tampering with the firearms, against Emma. The shots were legitimate, she said. Blake stormed out, refusing the $50,000 donation. Emma called Michael. It's bigger than I expected. What now? Privacy or justice? He asked. Blake hasn't paid, and the tampering was fraud, Emma said. There should be consequences. Police questioned Blake about gaming law violations, as the wager fell under Massachusetts regulations. The club revoked his records, and his legal team offered a $100,000 donation, a public apology, and a meeting. In a neutral conference room, Blake admitted, I reacted criminally. You're the finest shooter I've faced. Your husband taught you well. He said I was a good student, Emma replied. The right teacher helps us discover what's there. Weeks later, Emma led a veterans marksmanship program funded by Blake's donation. At a fundraiser, she announced the Nathan Ghost Miller Scholarship for Veterans. Twisting her ring, she whispered, This one's for you, Nathan. Emma's victory wasn't just defeating Blake, it was reclaiming her strength, honoring a promise, and proving that the quiet ones, forged in adversity, can reshape the world with a single perfect shot.